afternoon, or should I say good evening in Australia now. Okay, so it is our pleasure to be a part of a webinar today that organized by SKF Australia. Today's topic, we are going to talk about the spares inventory management optimization. Just to make it clear, usually when I present this topic, most of our customers start, bumbling around that, hey, what possibly SKF bearing company to know about the inventory management optimization, because we agree that I believe is most of you already recognize SKF as a bearing manufacturer. And particular for this topic, when I run the presentation, we're not going to talk about a bearing at all. We are talking about the spares. We are talking about MRO spares. So please bear in mind that whatever the materials or item that we mentioned during the presentation, all refers to the MRO spares. That means it's talking about your rotating equipment, your instrument equipment, your safety equipment, or others spare part discipline. Okay. So as Ranjit said, so hopefully by end of this webinar, you may gain something that practical can be done in your organization within or during this pandemic season. So welcome to all the audience that just start joining the webinar. Okay, so just to emphasize this particular webinar, this particular topic, only talking about the quick step or the quick area that you might try within your organization. So this is what we are going to cover. Okay. By the way, I forgot, as already mentioned by Ranjit, my name is Muhammad Hussein. Me as one of lead auditor for asset management assessor within ISO 55000. Okay, so now SKF is moving also for any organization, any supporting that required for any organization that would like to go for ISO 55000 certification. Then SKF can help them as a lead auditor to prepare themselves to be certified by ISO certified body. Okay, come back to today's presentation. We are going to talk about three different areas. One is, of course, we are going to talk about the insight, what happened around the inventory management. Okay, this is just like something that you may refer to your organization also, but refer to what happened in the global around inventory management. And then second, we are going to talk about specific on the spare part inventory management optimization from SKF perspective, that probably this topic or this solution can be done within your organization within a short time. Okay. One is we are going to talk about the material master data improvement, and the other one is quick optimization. The last one, actually in between A and B topic, I will also give the project reference and then some direct saving that we had from a previous project. So let's start. So this is an insight. So I will be quick on this one, because I just want to give you an idea about the number of insights that you might consider within your organization, and then move on for way forward or improvement. Example, only 10% of the spares usually utilized on regular basis. Okay, so that 10% sometimes cover 50% of the inventory value. Okay, example, if you have a 10 million of store value, So that's 5 million of stores value is allocated only for 10% of spares. Okay. And then something to be added here, that 20% of MRO spare stock never been used over the entire life cycle. So can you imagine within, after you have a 50% that allocated only for 10% of spares in the number of a value, but the other 50% already reduced by 20% of the fact that that spare part never been used over the entire life cycle of the plant. So sometimes you may call as a dead stock. Okay. The other thing, it's like number 4. This is almost everywhere. 15 to 25% of item being procured as OEM parts. Okay. We're not saying that you don't buy anything from the OEM, but be wise and then be practical. Which OEM part that can be converted into a general part? Because most of, I would say more than 75% of spare part that been bought by through OEM usually is expensive. So number 6, it's a quite regular happen within the organization, that there is a delay in a procurement process, meaning is internal lead time. So these 15 to 20% item are referred or returned back to the requester for clarification. Example, there is most of the time when the requestor maybe from the maintenance or from the operation, they just send the request order request to the procurement to follow up, and then procurement will try to maybe through the tender or just send for the RFI or RFQ to a different vendor, but none of the vendor that been selected by the procurement can obtain the item. So then the procurement need to go back again to the requester, what kind of exactly the item that the requester needed. Okay. This is also a quite interesting number days of inventory outstanding. Every year is increasing 10%. So number of days of inventory outstanding. So that means a number of item moving from the warehouse to be used by maintenance or operation or by safety people. Okay, so every year is increasing. So this is also quite need to be considered within the organization. So here, another the insight that you might as organization think about, there is a behavior for shifting the burden of inventory from the warehouse or from the logistic to the maintenance personnel. So I've seen a lot, at least in Indonesia. So in order to reduce the inventory level or the store value, so whatever the maintenance personnel request, once the goods come into warehouse, so then the warehouse people start to shifting the goods to the maintenance personnel. So that means they just kind of like moving the item from the inventory, from the central inventory to the maintenance workshop or to the maintenance warehouse or something like that. So that means sometimes the problem is sometimes most of the time, or probably most of the time, whatever the maintenance required is not usually used direct after the goods come. Most of the time, sometimes it's not used direct by the maintenance personnel. So they probably will have a spare time or will have a, a duration before they use the spare. So this is kind of like a problem. In one hand, the inventory level, the warehouse level is still low, but the maintenance spares build up in a maintenance department. But the problem is usually that goods are recorded under one work order. Okay, so once the goods issued by the warehouse. So from the warehouse point of view, the value already been taken out to the maintenance personnel. Okay, and then by maintenance personnel, once they close the WO, even though they don't use the spare part, they will the material cost is already absorbed. Okay, so this is kind of like a situation that quite often I saw in Indonesia. The number 12 also it's quite interesting. The real cost of carrying, holding an inventory item per year, 30% to 40%. I got this number by Terry Werman book, but usually I use the 20% to 25% as a, as a reference. Uh, at least in Indonesia, they use it between 20% to 25% as a holding or carrying cost. So this is a big number. Okay, so imagine if you have a store value or stock value 10 million Australian dollars. So that means $3 million allocated only for carrying the item. So understanding about the insight, so a refreshment about the typical situation around inventory management. So we kind of like SKF in this area sum up with what would be the key cost drivers. So that we came up with two ideas. One is from the inventory cost, the other one is from the procurement cost. So what would be the breakdown, the possibility? So if you look at it here, so a number of cost drivers that can be listed here. So I only listed 10 example that most of the time happen in around the globe. It's a project surplus. Even though we have a same facility for the same operation for the past 30 years, but still whenever we create one modification or one new project, there always be a project surplus. And then this project surplus, sometimes it's become a dead stock for the period of time. Okay. And the other one is that we oftenly too much dependent with the OEM for everything. Okay, if we, even though we already pass of the warranty period, we still carry the dependency with the OEM. And then we very seldom to manage the obsolete equipment and part. Okay, after 20 years, 30 years, so we can like loss to find out the obsolescence management. Okay, where the parts that is not available anymore in the market, or which supplier that been bought by other suppliers, something like that. Okay. And this is the common one, inadequate detail spec provided by the end user. Okay, so this is more and more in the Southeast Asia happen. The purchase order tags or the material description that sometimes make a procurement hard to find the item. Even that item or that spare is referring to OEM material. Okay, so we have a lot of sample that one organization could not obtain the price of OEM spares, even that a request went to the OEM company. This is also a common not having a central inventory management team. Okay, so in Australia, you probably have a lot of mining organization where the field can be probably from one central warehouse to the field operation. It's have a distance that management may think it's not a practical to have everything on central, but the satellite warehouse also have a have a disadvantage as well. Okay, so then we need to create a balance between having the central inventory or settling warehouse. The other one is unused item procured for the specific task. Okay, this is happen usually when the customer having the turnaround program, and they just consider almost all the spares required for one turnaround or for one overhaul, but at the end of the day, after the overhaul finish, and then they come back to the spares and then analyze it. Oh, hey, we have this before, and this is spare that we bought for turnaround, but we don't use. Okay. And this also uneven demand. So I think still the organization love to calculate the inventory needed for next year by a consumption pattern, even though the best way to go with the managing the stock by the demand, because every year you will expect our maintenance team or production team will go much better from the year before. So that means our availability, our reliability of equipment can be higher. So that means it's not necessarily we go for consumption pattern. So by having this list, we can like asking your organization. Maybe your organization has a different opinion. Maybe your organization also has a different cost driver. So this list can be add more and more. So we go for the spare parts inventory management optimization from SKF perspective. Okay, so we have a common words for spare part inventory optimization. When you have a spare part inventory optimization, that means you have a goal in your hand. And then we in SKF believe this one. So for that, this is a typical that you may consider for the improvement. First of all, you may consider to standardize the material specs. We are talking about the bill of material. At least if you don't have a complete bill of material for any equipment, at least consider to have a complete for your most critical equipment. And second thing is, after you define the material in the standards way, or you have the bill of material, then you may think about reviewing it and then cleanse and enrich the item description. So we are going to talk more on this area, material master data improvement. And then you may also think about identifying, analyzing and optimize the non-moving item. So this also a quick thing. If your organization would like to have a quick or low-hanging fruit, so by analyzing, by identifying and optimize the non-moving item, so you may have gained a lot of direct saving into that. And then probably you may come back to review the min-max strategy and optimize level. So we are going to talk about a few steps that SKF would like to share. It might be considered to be done in your organization. But don't forget, this improvement need to be governed, and this is some governance area that you also need to consider as well. So example, to govern all the items that been created. Okay, so there is a few organization they have done the material master data improvement by themselves, but they forgot to govern all the item in the structure way, in the process way. So then after 2 years they cleanse the material, and then the duplication, the obsolescence, it coming back again to fill up their material master. And then you might think to have a minimum once per year, okay, at least for the critical spare part. Okay, so then a yearly review for a non-moving item. Okay, and then to try to establish and enforce a review mechanism that give early warning. Example for shutdown and overhaul material procurement and consumption analysis. Okay, so these four area that we might think you in your organization can be considered as well. Okay, so just to highlight that we are going to talk more and more on number 2 and number 4. Okay, so we go for material master data. So why master data? Why this issue has been important? We go with a reference from ISO 8000. Okay, so as you can read very clearly, so whatever the data we have in organization needs to have a clear description, okay, that essential for the enterprise, that means the organization, that they can use as a reference in order to perform the transaction. Okay, so forget about the asset itself, but the important here is the data need to very systematic describe about the entities about that asset itself, that so the organization can use it for the transaction business. So in that way, if you have one item that cannot be procured by the procurement process, so that means something wrong with your data. Okay, so this master data can describe individual, organization, location, or service, rules, or regulation. Example, if your organization have a supplier, then you can go for the vendor data, right? So this is something about that you need to update it every year or once in 2 years, something like that. Same with the materials or the service master itself. So this is we refer to the ISO 8000. So this is kind of like a step where you need to have the quality data to build up the quality master catalog, and then this quality master catalog can lead you for the right asset. So the asset here can be material, the items, the service, or the people, or any others. So we are coming into the coverage, the improvement area. Okay? We can like start from the cleansing. All right. So any data of your in your material master, okay, and then we need to cleanse in terms of the duplication, in terms of obsolescence, in terms of insufficient description, and then we go further to standardize the description. All right. So here probably, let's say when you refer to a bearing, maybe a bearing ball or ball bearing, you know, to standardize the or to unify the description. And then we go for the enrichment for the insufficient description for each item. By doing these three, we expect to eliminate any duplication within the organization. Okay. And then by doing the enrichment, we may come also to get the interchangeable, the cross-reference, okay, particularly for organization that using the material code as a reference instead of a non-modifier or compare with a non-modifier driven or template material driven, okay, because some of the organizations still use the material code to drive their material management. And by doing 1, 2, 3, that we may expect to identify the obsolete, meaning the material that already obsolete from the market. And then eventually the other benefit is talking about the possibility from OEM to be converted to general or to original component manufacturer conversion. Okay. And then just to give you the idea, in 2004, I read about one statement from Oniqua that now it's been bought by IBM. So they say every 5,000 line item description, we always have a tendency of duplication between 5% to 15%. So then you can come back to your organization, how many material master line item you have within your SAP Maximo or JDO or Ellipse, right? Then you can probably consider, okay, so this is the tendency of the duplication between 5% to 15%. So this is additional the standard. Okay, you may have a different standard. Okay, UNSPC that common for consumer goods product, and NATO also been absorbed by Australian language cataloging previously. Okay, even though NATO has their own standard, usually in the military, and then something in very quite famous in petrochemical or oil and gas. It's a shell coding, so material equipment standard code. And then the last one, it's the attribute based catalog, which is a template different, template driven. So instead of item code driven, so we go for the template driven. Just to showing you some of anomaly in material master. So example of inadequate description. Okay. And then this example of 3 different part number with one item, one manufacturer, one part. Okay, but we have a 3 different item code. And this is an area that multiple item for the same part, but different manufacturer. So we are talking about ball valve, but because of this organization bought from different manufacturer, so they put the 4 different item code. Okay. And this is typical duplication data before improvement. Okay, so this is 2 data that we collected from from CMMS, any CMMS. And then after we improve, it might come to one code. So the material code can be merged or can be used for one code, and the other code can be shut off. So this is the area for the improvement from the OEM, the original equipment manufacturer item, to a generic original component manufacturer item, right? So example, this is the shield. For the equipment name is Amarillo. The second one is solar turbine. The item is thermocouple. Where you have here, the Amarillo did not build or did not make any seal. So this seal, eventually we found out this is a SKF seal. Same like here, the solar turbine did not produce any thermocouple. So the thermocouple is being produced by Allen Bradley. So here we are going to leave to organization to decide. You may go for SKF to buy this seal and then go to Allen Bradley to buy this thermocouple, or your organization policy is stick with the OEM. So, but we provide you the possibility that this is something that you might consider to buy from the original component manufacturer that will save you some dollars if you do that. So whom and how will get the benefit from the improvement? So there is for a different area that we usually see can or could get the benefit from this improvement, material master data improvement. One is the maintenance engineering, of course, the procurement, the finance, and as well as the store. How will it be? So this is how the benefit looks like. In the long run, it can lowering the procurement cost. Okay, more order potentially placed on the competitive bidding or on OCM vendor instead of OEM. So you may, in the long run, it will give the procurement cost reduction. The procurement lead time, as we aware that procurement lead time always having two different parameters, internal and external. So let's say the external is fixed because you got the external lead time from the vendor, but the internal, if you said, let's say one organization fixed the internal lead time is 1 month, but because the buying description is not sufficient for the procurement to collect any quotation from the vendor, then they have to back and forth asking more information to the requester, whether from maintenance side or from the engineering side or from the production side. So probably this effort can lead to more than a month's duration. So that means your internal lead time already goes up. Okay. Of course, this is the biggest one. You will have a lower inventory value within 1-2 years. Mostly I saw within this project, it's within 1 year. Okay, so lowering unit value, so eliminate of duplicate, and of course the lead time will optimize a min-max level. Okay, so you will optimum your stock level. Okay, so by having the material master data cleans and appropriate, so then you can organize the stock level in appropriate based on the item classification. So this can can avoid any further stock out, or probably the same for the excess stock. Example, if you have a clear description, then whenever you want to start the project, then you can always come back to the material master. Probably there is a from material project is similar with what you have. More tool time for engineering, okay, less interaction during the procurement process. Okay, so this is also very obvious. One, the data is complete and sufficient for the procurement, so then the engineering or the maintenance people will have more time for other things. Okay, of course the improved store management. Okay, so duplicate obsolete item been reviewed. Yeah, so more easy to identify the item. So this is the four function that in each organization can look a benefit from the material master data improvement. So this is just how much will be saved, you know. So as I already mentioned before, between 5% to 15% duplicate, and then we can simulate what exactly the number of dollar, and then also the cost holding will reduce as the number of stock goes down. Some of the benefit that the SKF done previously, like this is for one of the gold mining in Indonesia. It's one small project collaborated with the customer. So we only do the audit and spare optimization for 1,500 item. That 1,500 item only for a bearing, PT and seal. So this is collaboration between SKF and our distributor as well as the company. And then they provide the commitment with SKF, with our distributor, to give the whole procurement of a bearing to SKF. As a complement, as a service, we provide this service for this mining company. And still, even though only 1,500 items, we still find quite a good number of saving for the customer. Okay, so only 1,500 items, and that's only for bearing seal. But still, in those common items, we still found the duplication. And this is another contract that we have. We collaborate with a local SKF company in Canada, and SKF support doing the spare cataloging and spares optimization. So the customer is Rio Tinto in Canada, so we are doing it in Indonesia. And then this is the direct saving that we gain, okay, from 45,000 items being reviewed, clean, and updated, including the physical stock. And we take a picture of each item in customer warehouse, okay. So the benefit list from all the duplicate item been disclosed by the customer is $3 million. And this is another benefit from a different industry in pulp and paper. So still we found, even though only 5,000 items, so the direct saving up to 200,000. And then this is another example that how this material master data improvement can give you a way to get the direct saving. So this is another from power industrial. Okay. Of course, the number here for this power national industry is disclosed and approved by the customer itself. So we move to the second part, the second important area that we consider that you might think about doing it in yourself. Okay, so we go for the inventory control. So any lacks of policy around spare part inventory management, it will result in excessive storage costs. So, but also because maintenance and engineering is a custodian of the logistic, so whatever happened in the storage, it's also hampering the maintenance organization, especially when the important parts are unavailable. So this can create a long time downtime. Okay, so this creates something or food for thought when maintenance team perform criticality analysis on a spare part. So try to optimize your reorder point and regularly schedule cycle count. So this particular activity will save 1,000 each year in carrying costs and downtime while supporting any organization maintenance strategy. So in the next slide, so we will focus on, you know, how you can quick to do the criticality analysis and then optimize your reorder and then the scheduling the cycle count. So first, as we mentioned earlier, so try to identify your critical component, but before that you need to understand about what you have. Meaning is from the maintenance point of view, they probably already have their maintenance equipment, maintainable equipment that very critical for them. Okay. The second question is whether they have the complete bill of material for their maintenance operation. If not, then try to build this one. Okay. So the bill of material will provide the organization, any organization, an insight about the common component between a similar asset or a different asset. So one bearing can be used in one motor as well as in a pump as well as in a compressor. Okay, so this only can be achieved when you have a complete bill of material. Then you might to start doing the critical spare, and the easiest way is using the ABC analysis, and where the method is referring to Pareto principle 80-20, and we'll explain in another slide. Okay, so you may call it ABC or YXZ, but the bottom line is to divine which one is your spare part that consume of the 80% of your inventory value. Which one of the spares that consume 30% of your inventory value. And then by doing this, then you may focus on the part A and some of it to the part B. By doing this, then you might start to look at the A part and how you classify the A part. So the A part probably contains of different spares from electrical, mechanical, and instrument, and so on. So this is where the focus should be more. But don't forget, there is a challenge when you do the ABC analysis. First, it goes back to how your organization defining the asset or equipment. For the maintenance people, it should be a different with your accounting when defining the asset. For accounting, the one switch, one electric switch on the motor may not important for the accounting, but for the maintenance, for the electrical people, so it's probably a critical, because it's a drive the motor to run. Okay, so this is also need to be considered as well. And sometime in one organization, the criticality never been complete, okay, because the asset is not complete as well. And the most probably the criticality ranking for the equipment is only referred to the production or finance parameter. The bill of material very seldom, especially if your organization is quite old, more than 20% and 20 years or 30 years been running in the field, and data, this will raise a data and document issue. Others that you may feel it by within yourself. Okay, once you establish the ABC or YXZ, or you understand which area, which spare part classification that you need to focus, then we may go for the reorder point, or to set up the min max, to set up specific for the inventory, at least for the inventory under category A. So one of the calculation, simple calculation that you may use is the AOFQ, is quadrant 2 times annual demand multiplied by your fixed order cost divided by annual storage cost. So this is the simple calculation that you might use, but please remember this AOFQ formula only does well for any consumption item or consumption spares. So here, let's say one part you have an annual demand for 1,000 unit. The cost to store is $1.5 and cost about $90 to place and receive an order. So by having this, by putting all the number into the calculation, so that means the most economical reorder amount would be 346 units. So of course, this number is not something that you want from, let's say, from for a turbine part, or for compressor part, or for the ball mill part, something like that. But this is common for the consumable part, like, you know, maybe like a small bearing, or nut, or, you know, something like that. Okay, so another thing that you might want to consider as well to reduce the risk of stock out, okay, because this making it a reorder point or economic order quantity as actually having the goal to reduce the risk of stock outs. But you may also think about or consider about allowing to local vendor to store the item more cheaply, okay, seeking other vendor with shorter lead time, okay, and keeping only one part on hand to reduce cost by employ a second redundant asset to keep operation going when the first one failed. Okay, so this is another three that you might think as additional improvement. Of course, don't forget about the managing slow moving, but they are a little bit complex. That's why you need to take care of it a different way. But in this webinar, so I only give you the idea. Usually handled differently, but because the consideration of parameter is more than only for the fast moving part. Example, you need to think about the lead time, the unit cost, the spares the spares wear itself on non-wear item, and others that you need to think, like example the safety level, including the service level itself. Okay, so but don't forget, most of CMMS, as far as I know, like SAP or Oracle, they have that feature to support this activity. The third one, so from one is to identify your most value item. That means item category A. The second one is to identify the economic order quantity for that particular spare part, category A. Then this also organizing your maintenance store also can be done in a quick time during this pandemic itself, as a one of improvement that you can do it by your organization. Example, maybe the centralize the storeroom instead of having a satellite warehouse, because this is more efficient. Okay, when you have a central warehouse instead of satellite warehouse. But of course, there is some reason, like the increase the maintenance travel if the central room is far away from the field. Of course, yes, that's going to increase the maintenance person travel to the storeroom, and that will reduce the productivity. But in the other hand, you need to consider as well, you will reduce the record keeping, you will reduce the store labor for keeping for guarding the that's a satellite warehouse. The other one is the physical, performing the physical cycle account, particular for spares with the A class for the high value spare part. You might consider to be done it in monthly or even quarterly basis. Okay, so this is to avoid a dead stock for high value item. Okay. And then try to managing the bin stock for an item material that have little individual value but high volume usage. You know, small boat, nut washer. Okay, so this is something that you might also consider. Okay, the bin stock. The reorganize and clean store. Try to clutter. Maybe this is Japanese approach that quite been considered in consumer goods manufacture. Most of manufacturer in Indonesia, they use this approach, Kaizen, 5S, Seiri, Seiton, Seiso, Seiketsu, Shitsuke, and maximize vertical space, providing sufficient lighting and keeping heavy part near the floor. And the last one is for this presentation. So it's a one tips from SKF. Most of the optimization activity that been presented, been explained by us, can be done by your CMMS or your ERP or your AM. Okay. Example, the ABC analysis is most of your system have the ABC notification in that system. So but very seldom the organization use that to create or to make everybody in organization aware what would be the priority, what would be the value of this spare part in terms of ABC. And then to set up the min-max level or reorder point. Okay, so it may start with the top 10% or 20% of the part. I remember, like in SAP, they have what they call this spare part SPP feature, spare part planning, where the feature can help the organization automatically set up the stocking profile by demand. So what the organization needs to do is just to fill the data, and then the system will automatically provide you the considerable stocking profile. And then in your system also can schedule the cycle count to confirm inventory accuracy, especially for the A category A part. Okay, so this is something that very frequently to be set up in the system. So at least try to consider to utilize more of your CMMS. Here, the last one is that the spare part optimization provide measurable value saving to the organization. So here I would like to show you one of the project that SKF been done for oil and gas industrial. So from A to Z, from the standardization until to optimization. Okay, so the customer again in outside Indonesia. Okay, so let me the file just to give you. Please bear with me a while, so I will share it. Okay. Hopefully everybody can see the Excel file. I just explained you the report that we that been shown in this webinar. The item number representing the item code. Okay, so number of equipment installed, meaning is the number of equipment operated in this customer. So we have a lead time, we have an issue unit, we have a number of quantity installed in each equipment. So that means each equipment has two this item. So this item represent the pin, taper pin. Okay, and then you also see here the service level, and then this is because the customer use SAP, so we provide the short description and also long text description. So the manufacturer and the supplier and spare classification, as well the safety deviation factor. So here I'll show you the number of equipment that use this item, because it said it's 22, so there is a 22 equipment that use this pin. Okay. So this is what we refer with the standard or standardization of the material. So you create a bill of material, so we know exactly what kind of equipment that use this item. Then we also create the number of, we know exactly the number of critical equipment, which of from this list of equipment, okay, we know exactly which equipment that critical, and then we know exactly the quantity installed for each equipment, and then by having this, then we create the spare criticality. Okay, by having this spare criticality, and then you know the value of this item, and then what would be the service level, then we can create a min max for this, or even economic order quantity or safety stock. Okay, and at the same time we also create the suffice material master description for this spare part. So here we have a different item, I think. So you can have a different item here just to show you the report. Okay, so we have everything here. So what would be the different equipment? So at least I think it's around 20,000 of item listed here. Then each, okay. So we have around 20,000 items. So this is another example. Okay. So this optimization, it can be done in separate way. Let's say you want to do the material master management improvement for first, then you go to the spare part optimization after the standardization. or and rationalization. But for SKF, we always recommend do your basic first and go for the optimization. So the optimization will never optimize if you don't do the basic thing. So I think that's will uh, that will end my presentation for this one. So I'll hand it over to you, Ranjit. And then